Congratulations on your first feature. Could you start by just giving a brief introduction to what audiences can expect?
Ooh, can expect. I mean, you mean the story? What the story is about?
Yeah, the story or the tone or...
Well, this is a film set in 1976, as the title says. And it's about a woman, a 50-year-old bourgeois woman, who goes to her house in the beach to do some work, and in the house, some renovations. And when she's there, family priest asks her to take care of a young guy who he's taking, who's staying at the church, and is hiding there. And so she, in a way, this takes her to an unexpected place in her life, an unexpected situation, and kind of opens up her eyes to what's going on in the country at that time. 1976 was one of the worst years of the dictatorship, one of the most crude and cruel years of dictatorship. So it's like the path of her from her very bourgeois life, and like with all the privileges and of life, to understanding what's going on.
So what compelled you to use Pinochet's Chile as the backdrop and the context for your first feature?
You know, I arrived the opposite way. I first asked myself about how was life for a woman at that period. And then, of course, I had to, I have to integrate what was going on outside. It's like kind of like the same path of this character that I was saying. I was interested in this because I was researching about my grandmother's life, and she died, in fact, on 1976, and this is why the title. So I started asking myself about her life. She was really depressed at that moment, and I knew she was interested in art, but somehow she thought that she was too old. At 40-something years old, she was too old to start a new life and become an artist. And this was for me like the starting point and the inspiration. So I asked myself, like, what happens to a woman at that during that year? How's life for a woman during that period? And then, of course, the background came and was integrated.
Yeah, and a lot has been made about the fact that this film it's almost an outlier in terms of films made about South American dictatorships, because it's seen through the lens of a woman. Why did you think it was, why did you feel compelled to look at that story through that lens?
Yes, of course. This is one of the reasons. Exactly what you're saying. I felt like we had a lot of narrative about dictatorship. I'm always into, reinforcing memory. I think it's so necessary, and even more when we talk about our big wounds in history. I think trauma has to be revised over and over so that we can overcome it. And maybe we will never overcome it. It will always be there. So this is why we keep on, trying to understand. But I thought that it was necessary to have other points of view so that we can see it again. We can really see it again, and not having something that goes like through our eyes, and we are not interested in more, because we know a point of view that has already been seen sometimes becomes invisible. And so I thought that it was important to have something from another perspective, and a perspective that was already, I mean, that was that hadn't been observed. I thought it was a point of view that was necessary, because I think we had like a, I don't know if this is the word, but a depth? No. Like there was something that, I don't know the word in English, but it's like some a point of view that had to be addressed. No?
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. And you know, that personal perspective is, I think, like at the heart of the story. And I don't know if you would accept this, but the you know, the political context feels like it's secondary to Carmen's personal arc. Would you say that that's fair?
The political.
As in the character study is really what the film is about, and that's the heart of the film.
Yes, it is. In fact, I think that, and this is, for me, this is political as well, because then you realize that anytime you go into someone's life, it will always be political. It will always be crossed by what's going on, and and this is why I was interested in the point of view of domestic space, because I thought that, I mean, one of my questions was like, how does the outside world, the history with a capital H, goes and filters into a house? How we are like crossed by, I mean, how we are touched by history. So yeah, you're right. I mean, but they are both together, no? When you look at someone's life, you're looking at politics. You're being politically, you're being political.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the opening shot of the paint mixture, because I thought that was one of the most, you know, obviously it's not quite the opening shot, but it's one of the most arresting, you know, almost opening shots that I've seen in a film recently. And it seemed to kind of imply to me that the story is like a kind of melting pot between, you know, the public and the private, and the micro and the macro, and all of these things that are melded into the story. Can you talk to me a little bit about the thinking behind that shot? Because I think it really sets the tone for the rest of the film.
Yeah. Yes, as you say, it's it's how things are gonna. What we were saying before, no, the intimate space and the outside world, and how do they meld, and they one touches the other one, and at the end it's the same thing, no? It's like having a humanistic perspective and having a political one. It's all together. It's all mixed, but what took me there was really going into the character's mind and asking myself, what would she been doing? No? And I was wondering, and I said, well, maybe she's painting the beach house. And I said, okay, and how do I look at that? And this is how the painting came. And it is, I mean, I think that what happened in Chilean history during the last period, since we recovered democracy in the 90s, all these years were like a pot that was getting warmer and warmer, because the difference between rich and poor were getting more and more apart. And there's something about this also, like, you know, how we didn't, and this ended up in an outburst in 3 years ago. So yes. This is what I mean. It is this. It's like, yeah, this melting pot that will go into a boiling one. And I think this happened in Chilean history very recently, but it took all these years to until it boiled, came out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's kind of how the world almost feels now as well, really, isn't it? You know, the entire world feels like it's coming to a kind of a boiling point. So in that sense, the film is quite timely.
Yes, this is. I was always asking myself about this because so many things happened in the process of making the film, and it took me a long time to make the film, and pandemic in between also. So all the changes that the world was like experiencing, and I kept on asking myself, is it worth it to shoot this film? No, because the context was changing, and I kept on thinking that it was, because I think there are many things that have been the same. No? Like, I mean, we go through all these changes, but seems that difference between rich and poor are getting more and more. How you say, strong or
Extreme.
like extreme, yeah, extreme. I mean, after the pandemic, it's like absolutely crazy how the wealth is concentrated in a small group who have the power of taking decisions for the rest. So, yes.
I mean, it's interesting that you say that you considered whether the film was worth making anymore because the context was changing so much. But do you not think that that's probably one of the benefits of making a period film, in the sense that the story isn't necessarily affected by what's happening currently, and that you can kind of, you know, it's more of a mirror of what's happening now?
Absolutely. I always wanted this, wanted to observe the present from the point of view of the past. And I think, in a way, also we're always dealing with this. We're always, I mean, this is, I mean, making periods films help you understanding that the time is it's a very ambiguous concept, no? Because we are always dealing with the past all the time, and I think that having, as you said, a mirror makes you understand the present. Having a mirror of the past, always it's a way to understand what's going on now.
Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the cinematography of the film, because taking its cue from that first shot, you know, the color palette is very specific, and it's quite, you know, it's impeccably designed and it looks very beautiful. Was that sort of precise design something that you had in mind from the beginning of the process, or is that something that develops as, you know, as the script comes to fruition?
I think it was, I mean, I was always interested in color, and I was studying visual arts, so I think it was something that was like a part of myself. I would think of these when I was writing, but I think it really took shape when we were working closely to the shooting. When we were able to know what we were counting of, because the resources weren't huge, so we had to be really precise on what to choose, and then, you know, which colors to choose and what we had also.
So also moving on to the character of Carmen, because she's quite a confounding, confusing character with a lot of conflicts, and, you know, the film is never very transparent about her motivations. What was it like developing the character of
I was inspired by my grandmother's story, and I was inspired by this idea that a woman in the 70s felt that at her 40s life was kind of was over, you know? And this was like the starting point, and I felt that it was interesting to look at this period from not from like a black and white perspective, not from like extreme right or people like extreme left, and you know, so have more ambiguous point of view, because I think this kind of black and white discourses sometimes don't let us like enter into the emotion of history. I think that we have to look at history from like an emotional perspective also. So yeah, this is what took me to this character, trying to understand all her contradictions and paradoxes.
Kuppenheim's performance is quite exceptional in sort of gluing together all of these contradictions and the emotions that you're talking about. What was the process like of developing that character between the two of you? And does your background as an actor, does that inform your process of how you work with your actors?
I think that, yes, maybe. Yeah, I mean, of course, not like trying to impose that, you know, but I think mainly because we've met before with Aline Kuppenheim, the actress, playing together in a couple films, so I knew her. And I think we talked a lot. And in these conversations, and since I was working on the film for several years, and she was involved years before the shooting, we had the time to talk about my inspirations. And when I told her about my grandmother, she told me about her grandmother, and I discovered that she was also this woman was a great character, even more, I would say. Like breaking rules, even more than mine. So I incorporated some of these, some ideas of her own grandmother into the character. And I think it was really important for me that Aline is a very sensitive person, and also like an author. She's a director in theater, and I think this sensibility was shared. She shared this with the character.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been great to speak to you, and good luck with the film.
Thank you very much.